All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we are going to be focusing on the atomic bomb and how it worked, um, the way it functions, and things like that, what the theories about it. So, we're going to go over that today. So, here's your warm up picture. The first question asks you to analyze the picture and tell me what's going on here. The second question says, what do you think this artist is trying to say about the Nazi Empire? Okay, now this warm-up is pretty interesting because I've had like one group of classmates say that it looks like one thing and another say another thing. So like totally opposite. So it's been pretty interesting. So I want to see what you think. So pause the video, write your response as we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right. So the most common weapons, we're going to go through the British, Soviet, Americans, and Germans. So for the British, the standard rifle was a Lee Enfield. Now, if you look at the machine guns, however, if you look at those guns right there, the first row towards the middle, if you go 5 down, that was the Bren or the Type 99 gun. That was the one typically used by the British. The Soviets, they had a sidearm. Their pistol was a M1895 revolver. The reason for that is because they felt that it didn't jam as much, and that was what you don't want in battle. The other rifle, which was a Mosin Nagant. So if you can look at the top row, the third one in, third one should say um, towards the edge. That is the Nagant. Now the Americans were pretty interesting. They had a lot of different type of guns. The sidearm, the standard one, is the M1911, which is at the bottom row. It's the one closer to the inside. For the rifle, it was the M1 Garand. So if you look at the second row, all the way to the end, you'll see the M1. Now the machine gun was pretty interesting. It was the Thompson gun. Okay. Now a lot of people think when they hear Thompson, they think Tommy gun. No, Tommy gun has a round drum. The Thompson had the standard, like a regular clip. And the other one was a shotgun. The shotgun gun was the Winchester model 1897, which was also known as the trench gun. It's a pump action um, shotgun, and this was mainly used during when they were in towns and things like that. You wouldn't really use it out in the middle of nowhere, because at a distance, the shotgun's not going to do as much damage. But close to close combat, yeah, it's going to do a lot of damage, and that's why they had it when they were going into cities and things like that. As for the Germans, they had the Gwar rifle. For the submachine gun, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. But the sidearm is one, if you've ever played Call of Duty and things like that, Battlefield, you probably seen this gun quite a bit of times. It's called the Luger pistol. And the reason why these Germans loved the Luger is because it never really ever jammed. Okay? A lot of guns, they do jam besides revolvers and bolt actions. Those don't really ever jam. And the Luger wouldn't. I mean, it was very rare if it did. All right, so June 6, 1944, also known as D-Day. A lot of people tend to think when they hear D-Day, the storming of the beaches, which you see in that top picture. Um, yes and no. Okay, the most important part that's missing is this. At midnight, 24,000 paratroopers in over 1,000 planes, they go over the English Channel, and let's say here's the beaches, here's some forest land. They would then drop the soldiers. Their job was to cause distractions, basically lure the Nazis away from the beaches, bring those tanks, bring those extra soldiers away from the beaches and fight the paratroopers so that at 6:30 that same morning the land forces were going to land on Normandy Beach and try to take that territory. In total, there was 176,000 men crossing that channel in 5,300 different boats. Okay, this landing on the beach was known as Operation Overlord. Okay, now if you watch movies like Private Ryan, you play video games like Call of Duty World War II or Battlefield, you probably have heard the term Omaha Beach. That is a section. Okay, there were 5 total sections. That was one of them, Omaha. The Americans had another section called Utah. Those are the areas that we were supposed to attack. As for the British troops, they had 2 sections as well. One section was called Gold, and the other one was called Sword. Now, here's one group that really gets no credit. Nobody talks about them when they talk about D-Day, but these guys were there, and that's the Canadians, believe it or not. The Canadians had a landing area called Juno. Okay, now you're gonna learn this next year when you're in U.S. history, when you talk about the Civil War. But the bloodiest one-day battle was during the Civil War. It was called the Battle of Antietam. Basically, 2,500 men died that one day. D-Day would beat that. Okay. So the United States, Britain, and Canada storm the beaches. They're pushing their men through. The guys go through. They circle around. They capture some Germans. Some are able to flee and run away from the beaches. And now the U.S. and Britain have a foothold in Europe. Okay, now they have an area where they can bring tanks, bring their jeeps, bring, have a territory where they can land planes, things like that. Now Hitler, remember from a couple lessons ago about Stalingrad, they're fighting the Russians, they're losing, so they have to fall back. Hitler basically takes his men from Russia, saying like, hey, we're not going to beat this guys, but the Americans and British, we can beat them because they're barely getting into this country. So let's send all those soldiers, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, send them to France to push back the Americans and the British. So the way I explained it in class is kind of like this. Think of like the Russians as a big wildfire. Okay, they're huge. Okay, and then on the other side, you got a little fire where the Americans and the British are. Hitler is basically taking his men from the big fire to take care of the small fire to put it out. Get rid of that fire, before it gets any bigger. That's the best analogy I can give. Okay, that's what Hitler's doing, taking his guys away from this huge wildfire, which is Russia, and taking it to this other side where the Americans and British are barely starting to take over. So that fire is barely starting. He's sending these guys there to extinguish it. So here's your first question. Do you think Hitler is doing the smart thing and moving his men from fighting the Russians to fighting the US and Britain? Why do you think, if you say yes, tell me why you think that. If you say no, tell me why you think that. Okay, so go ahead, pause the video, write your response, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So Hitler is actually starting to lose some of the love, faith, and loyalty of the German people, especially those in his military. Some military leaders are feeling like, hey, you know what? He's gonna kill us all, So some of them were thinking about staging a coup d'état, which is again when the military takes over the government. Now, we know that there were at least 42 different plans to kill Hitler. We know this because there was documentation, letters, journals, things like that written down. There could have been so much more that we don't know about because, again, those plans were not written down in any which way. But the total number of attempts to kill Hitler is unknown. We don't know if some guys were ready at a rally to kill him, but, soldiers got in the way or some people, whatever it may be. The closest that they ever got to killing Hitler was on July 20th. Um, this was known as the July Plot or Operation Valkyrie. Basically, these high-level German officers and officials, they felt, hey, if we kill Hitler, right, kill the top guys in command, then we can take over, arrest the SS soldiers, and basically try to negotiate peace between the Allies and Germany before the Allies completely destroy all of Germany or Hitler destroys all of Germany. So the plan was to go to the Wolf's Lair. This is a secret hideout area where um, the German officials and Hitler would discuss tactics and what they're going to do next, things like that. Now, the Wolf Lair had two different buildings. One was made of concrete and the other one was made of wood. The plan was to detonate the bomb in the concrete building. Hopefully, one or two things would happen. One, the explosion would cause the concrete building to collapse and basically crush and kill everyone inside. Or two, that the pressure inside the concrete building would be so great that the fire, when it exploded, it would just zip through hallways, bust through doors, destroy everyone inside. Okay? Problem was, the meeting was moved from the concrete building to the wood building. And so when the bomb detonated, it exploded, yeah, but it didn't have as much of an impact as they were hoping. Hitler did get hurt. Okay? He did get bruises and cuts and stuff like that, but he didn't die. Now, while communication was cut off at the Wolf's Lair, those German official guys tried to take over Germany, but eventually word got out that Hitler had survived. And now, because those guys tried to take over Germany, um, Hitler now knew who was in charge, who were these guys, and they basically went and got each one of them. These guys were Colonel General Ludwig Beck, Colonel General Frederick Olbrich, Major General Henning von Tresckow, and the guy who detonated the bomb and stuff like that was Colonel Schneck von Stauffenberg. Okay, and all these guys were executed. August 15th of that same year, the American and French forces take over southern France, and Hitler basically tells his men, get out of France. Now, come back to Germany. So these guys are trying to get back to Germany, but the Allies trap about 80,000 of them. And these guys are trying to get out. So they basically punch a hole and they're driving towards Germany. What the Allies do then is they start dropping bombs, to stop the soldiers. Now, typically, most people would react if they're driving down the road and all of a sudden bombs are dropping in front of them. Most people would stop their car, maybe, go in reverse, find another way around or something. No, these guys went straight through the bombing, and of the 80,000, 10,000 of them died. So that should tell you when they were given an order, they followed it, even if it meant they were going to die. All right, so here's your second question. Put yourself in Hitler's shoes. You're being overrun in the east with Russia. You're being overrun in the south with the Americans and the Italians. And now you got the west, the Americans and the British and the French. So you're being contained now. And on top of that, some of your people and the military leaders, they're trying to kill you. So with all that going on, what would be your next move if you were Hitler? Again, you're being attacked from the east, the west, and the south. The north, there's the ocean, but that's being controlled by the British. Okay, and on top of that, your people, not all of them, but some of them, and some of the military leaders hate you and they're trying to kill you. So what would you do? So tell me if you were Hitler, what would you plan on doing? Um, Putting I don't know, that's an automatic wrong. Okay, think, think to yourself, if you were him, what would you do? So pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. So what Hitler decides to do is give one last hoorah type of punch. All right. So what he does is he basically orders his men to gather as many soldiers as they can. So they are able to gather 20 infantry divisions, which is about 250,000 men, and whatever tanks and planes they can get. So which is about 600 tanks, about 600 planes, and he tells them, "You guys are going to attack the Americans, the British, and the French soldiers." So along this 50-mile front, they push them, they attack them, and they are actually pushing back the line. They're actually making progress. Okay, they even capture 10,000 American soldiers, and they cut off supply to other American and British groups. About a month later, by January 30th, 1945, the Allies had gained all that land that the Nazi had gained. They gained it back. The Nazis lost about 100,000 men. So a little less than half their men they lost. And all their planes and all their tanks basically destroyed. So now Germany is in full retreat and they are basically almost done now. And so the writing is on the wall. The Americans, the British, they see this as like, hey, this was their last push. It didn't work. Let's finish it. April 25th, American soldiers are marching in this place called Torgau. And here comes some soldiers on this other side. And they're like, wait, who are they? So they scout them out. They look at them. And they're like, well, they're not Nazis. As they get closer, they realize, hey, you guys are Russian. The Russians like, oh, you're Americans. So they meet up at Torgau, and they're basically like, okay, so y'all want to march this way? All right, let's do that. And so here is the Russians, the Americans. They meet up, and they basically go now this way. All right. The next day, the Russians hit Berlin. April 30th, the Russians go to Reichstag. Now, this Reichstag is the heart of the German power. This is where the Nazis' headquarters is. Later that afternoon, the Russians are about half a mile away from Hitler's bunker. Some German soldiers are fighting to the end. They're not giving up and things like that. Some Nazi soldiers are fighting, and once it looks like they're about to lose, they quit. Some Nazi soldiers, as soon as the Russians start firing at them, they quit. Okay. While in the bunker, Hitler gives his final command. He appoints Admiral Karl Donitz head of state. He appoints Joseph Goebbels as chancellor. Hitler then marries his longtime girlfriend, Eva Braun. This woman has been with him since day one, and they finally get married. Now, Hitler tells the soldiers outside his room, when you hear the gunshot, take my body outside and burn it. So they close the door, have their privacy. Eva Braun takes some poison. She passes away. They give their dogs poison. The dogs die. And then Hitler shoots himself in the head. And just as the soldiers are ordered, when they hear the gunshot, they open the door, get Hitler, take him outside, and they light his body on fire. And oh, I can't remember if it's like a half hour, an hour later or so, the Russians coming through the bunker area. They see the burnt body. They just go right past it. They go into the bunker. They find like one of Hitler's right hand men basically killed himself, his wife, and they're like 8 kids, 6 or 8 kids. Basically the same thing, poison, you know. Um, and they're like, "Where's Hitler? Where's Hitler?" And these guys are like, "He's upstairs. We burned him." And they're like, "Oh, that was Hitler. Oh, okay." So May 7th, Germany officially surrenders. May 9th is known as VE Day, which is Victory in Europe Day. November 22nd through the 26th, the Allies have a conference in Cairo, Egypt. Remember, the war is still going on. Just because the Nazis uh, quit and Hitler's dead doesn't mean the war is over, because we still got Japan. So they basically say the only way this war will end is if Japan gives an unconditional surrender, meaning lay down their guns all around the world, things like that. Not oh, if you don't fire at us, we won't fire at you. That's armistice. They're saying, no, lay down your guns and quit completely. Give up all the land you've taken, if you still have that land, things like that. So here's your next question. Why do you think Hitler orders his men to burn his body? Okay, I can tell you this, some people in class, they are going to be like conspiracy theorist people, because they came up with some good stuff. So I want to know what you think. What do you believe are some possible reasons why Hitler had his men burn his body after he died? Okay, so think about it, pause the video, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So, 1938, German scientists discovered this thing called nuclear fission, not fusion, fission, which makes atomic bombs possible. Basically, what happens, nuclear fission is this: you get a free neutron and you hurl it right at another atom. Once that happens and it hits it, other free neutrons come off of it, and that one solid molecule becomes two lighter elements. And as you see from this picture, those little arrows coming off the big element, that's energy. Now, nuclear fission, it does create energy, but it doesn't continue. It just kind of, and that's it. There's the energy. It's gone. They needed to have nuclear fusion. That's the key part. That's what's going to continue the chain of reaction, which would then be self-sufficient. It would basically give off this pure amount of energy. Okay. Now, one of the big misconceptions and one of the biggest uh, like not I want to say lies, but the myths and just people just not knowing history. Albert Einstein did not create the atomic bomb. Okay, what you see there in that picture, that is his E equals mc squared. That's it right there. Energy equals mass times the speed of light. That's it right there. What Einstein did do, though, is once he heard about the nuclear fission, he wrote a letter to President Roosevelt saying, hey, the Nazis are going to more than likely use this to create a weapon. Now, Roosevelt does listen to Einstein because, again, he's Einstein. He's the world's smartest man. And it kind of helps out Einstein's plea, his case, because the Americans get word from the spy network that Hitler is trying to create a bomb, a big bomb. So now Roosevelt's like, oh, damn, Einstein's probably right. So December 28th, 1942, President Roosevelt authorizes the foundation for the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project is a code name given for the American-led effort to create an atomic bomb. Okay, so whenever you hear in a video game or a movie, you hear the phrase Manhattan Project, it's about the atomic bomb. Now, this guy you see in that picture right there, that is the quote-unquote father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer. If any name we should associate with the atomic bomb, it's Oppenheimer, not Einstein. Okay, Oppenheimer loved Einstein. He followed his work and stuff like that, but Einstein did not create the bomb. This guy was one of the top people who did create the bomb. Now, to ensure that this whole creation of the atomic bomb was secret, the United States basically broke up this project into like 30 places around the country. So like one group will be making the casing of one bomb, another group will be working on the electronics of it. One part would be making the shell, of the inner core, and the last group would be doing the working on fusion, you know, finding out how is it possible to create fusion. Another group would be doing research on what elements would work for a nuclear fusion reaction and things like that. So no, even though all these groups were doing different things, no two groups knew what the other ones were doing. They didn't even know about the other groups. This project was so top secret. Even the vice president of the United States had no idea that this was being done and created. Okay? The second most powerful man in our country had no idea the atomic bomb was being made. That's how top secret this was. Very few people knew all the pieces that were being done to create this weapon. There were three major locations: Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Hanford, Washington, and Los Alamos, New Mexico. That's where Oppenheimer was. Now, another famous myth is that the bomb was created partly underneath a football stadium. That is true. Okay, I can tell you that. That myth, it is true. The world's first nuclear reactor started becoming self-sustaining, meaning once the fusion kicked on, like kind of like your car, once it gets started, it can stay on. You have to hold the engine the whole time. The key. You just and then once it started, boom, it's on. Same thing happened here. The inner core, they got it to start working to where it created energy on its own. And all this happened while there was a football game happening above their heads. So a student asked me in class, well, what would happen if they, let's say, added more power? Well, that reactor might have exploded. And if you've seen the movie The Dark Knight Rises, where Bane presses the bomb and then the football field just like collapses, that easily could have happened, or it would have exploded and those people just in the whole stadium could have just went, you know, it's a possibility. So, yeah, that is a true story. Okay. So here's my next question to you. If Hitler had created the atomic bomb first, which country do you think he would have dropped the bomb on? Britain, Russia, or the United States? Now think about it. Think about it like this, like I said in class. Britain is that cockroach that won't die. Okay, every time Hitler tries to attack them, tries to hurt them, kill them, they just keep coming. The British are non-stop. They just won't die. The Russians are the country that Hitler feels we can't beat them. They're indestructible. And the US is the new pain in the butt country. Because remember, Nazis were controlling the war. They were winning everywhere. And then the US come, and then here we go, kicking them out of Africa, kicking them out of Italy, and now making our way into Europe. So if Hitler had one bomb, who would he drop the bomb on? The cockroach that won't die, the country he feels are indestructible, or the new pain in his butt? And tell me why you picked that country. Okay, so think about it, write your response because we're moving on, in 3, 2, 1. So, again, like I told you, there's very few people who know everything what's happening for the atomic bomb. There were two major theories about what might happen if this atomic bomb goes off. Remember, these guys have no idea what's going to happen. We know nowadays because we could look back in time and say, like, oh, this is what happened when a nuclear bomb goes off. But back then, they had no idea. So, one of the theories was that, remember, I told you there's a chain reaction that needs to continue, so energy is just given off, right? For it to continue instead of just being, psst, and that's it. The theory was that the chain reaction would not stop. So when the atoms hit other atoms and they release energy, they would just keep going, just bing, boom, 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 and just continue, basically engulfing the earth in total flame and fire and destroying all of life. That's one theory. The other theory was that this atomic bomb was going to be so big, so massive, so hot that when it exploded and it goes up and up and up, that it was going to reach the atmosphere, light that on fire, basically punching a hole through the magnetic barrier, and then UV light, maybe even a solar flare, might be making its way through that hole and cooking us. Now, if you've ever been in the sun for more than an hour with no suntan lotion, you know you can get burned quite easily and it hurts. Imagine that happening instantaneously when you put your arm out into the sun. That's what happens if there's no UV or no atmosphere protecting us from the ultraviolet rays that hit the earth. Okay. With those two theories in mind, our guys who were in charge were like, let's try it out. Let's see what happens. Now, they knew the uranium bomb was going to work. They had absolutely great feeling it was going to work. There's going to be no problems with the uranium bomb. But the plutonium bomb, they were kind of like, let's see what happens. It might be a dud. It might not work. Let's try it out. And on July 16th, 1945, at this site called Trinity near Gordo, New Mexico, they tested the plutonium bomb and it just lit up the sky. And these observers were like 10,000 yards away, and they were just in awe of like what they just saw. Oppenheimer gives the best quote. He quotes the Hindu scripture that says, I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. This man realized the destructive power of this atomic bomb, and he is one of the main people responsible for this. So, here is your exit ticket question. You can answer whichever one you feel you can answer better. Go with that one. So, if the atmosphere had been destroyed, do you think any humans would have survived back then? And if you say yes, tell me this. Would any people still be alive today? What do you think? Do you think we'd still be the same? Do you think we would have, since kind of mutated? Do you think we would have found another place to live, another type of lifestyle? What do you think? The other question is this. See how you're in class right now or where you're at? You know, at that moment, right now, you get a text message. You're the only person who gets this text message that says an atomic bomb is about to drop in 10 minutes in the town you're in, whether it's Fresno or if you're out, if you're in Clovis or wherever. An atomic bomb is about to drop where you're at in 10 minutes. What do you do? Explain to me in detail, step by step, what would be the thing you would do in that 10-minute time? Now, I've had some students say, well, can you get away from an atomic bomb in 10 minutes? Yes, yes, you can. Okay, if you're able to get in a fast vehicle and get away. Now, again, you have to remember, you're the only one who knows. Nobody else knows. So traffic, if this is a Friday night, you're doing this, traffic on the 99 is gonna be busy. On the 41, what's this other one? 180? Is that the other one? I think so. All those highways are gonna be busy if you're watching this on a Friday night. You know, Sunday morning, if you're watching this on then, it might not be that bad. So think of it like that. So right there at this moment when you're watching this right now, 10 minutes from now, time bomb's gonna drop. What do you do? Okay. So once you answered one of these two questions, you're done with this lesson. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. Um, with that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later, okay?